Thanks everyone for joining today. Yeah, I'll be talking about a passion of mine. Hopefully it's going to be as interesting to you as it is to me. The title of my presentation is Unlocking the Chain, Blockchain from an Engineer's Perspective. So the content of the presentation, I'll give you a brief intro about who I am, why it is that I am so passionate about Bitcoin, Bitcoin and the blockchain, how they relate, some popular questions about Bitcoin and the blockchain, some other common topics that you might see around the press or on the news, some information regarding building services engineering, and also some case studies about blockchains used in construction. Then I can recommend a few very high quality resources if you did want to learn some more about these topics. Finally, some contact details, current contact details for myself, and some final thoughts. So here I am at this is a recent Ethereum hackathon. So Ethereum is like a Bitcoin, it's like a cryptocurrency, but this was a hackathon in London a few months ago, obviously when social distancing wasn't an issue. That's after staying up until about 4 o'clock in the morning, doing some hacking and then continuing on the next day. So yes, as it says there, I'm a technophile. I love computers, I love data, I love gadgets. I'm an engineer at heart, always find passion around these sorts of topics. My education is a Bachelor's of Engineering and Motorsport Engineering. I then carried on to do a PhD in automotive engineering. I've spent around a decade in the automotive industry in a professional manner, slowly moving on to more and more software related topics as I've found greater interest in this area. I've been following Bitcoin and the surrounding topics, so cryptocurrencies, for about 5 years now. And for the past 9 months, I've been working as a blockchain development engineer, working on some real life practical hands-on projects, which has been very cool, very enlightening. And yeah, been learning more and more about how much I don't know about the area. So it's a great area to read up about and go down the rabbit hole. So why Bitcoin? Why is it that I love it so much, and why do I enjoy it so much? Well, first off, it's distributed and decentralized. I will go through these in a little bit more detail, but at a high level, it's transparent, trustless, immutable, and it's a positively disruptive technology. So to dig in a little bit about each of those, being distributed and decentralized, what is that? What does that mean? So an example of a centralized system is something like television. And you can see that web there, you have a central hub with lots of spikes out, all sort of sending data or sending television or radio or whatever it may be, but you have this one central hub in the center which is controlling the output of data. It's very easy to control that. It's very easy to manipulate as well. You only have to do it at one place. Moving slightly further away from centralized systems, you have a decentralized system, something like YouTube, for example, or Netflix. This is when you have many hubs spread about all over the place. So you can think about maybe Amazon's distribution warehouses as well. These are similar sort of decentralized hubs. These are much harder to control. You need a bit more communication. You need a bit more strategic planning. And they're also harder to manipulate. So if you wanted to affect or disrupt that, you need to obviously attack a lot more places or change a lot more things to have an effect over the overall network. And then finally, you have a distributed system, which is decentralized too. Now, in this case, you can see from all of those lines drawn together, connecting each other up, if you cut one of those lines, it wouldn't really have much of an effect over the communication between the other hubs. They can all operate fairly autonomously, and it means that it's a much more robust system. However, so I'll use an example there of a home media system. If everyone has their DVDs at home, you cannot control what everyone's watching. You cannot change what DVD collection they have. So it's a much harder to control system, much harder to manipulate, but it is a much more robust system once it's up and running. So Bitcoin is a decentralized and distributed network that is running autonomously. So it is, in essence, a much harder to control, a much harder to manipulate system than the other examples. Bitcoin is transparent. So transparency means accountability. If you cannot hide, everyone can see what you're doing. There's no place that you can sort of do sneaky transactions, that you can hide things from those who might be interested or those who are invested in what you're doing. Bitcoin is open source. The software is there for everyone to read, to download, to modify if they want. Everyone can run it. It's free to do so. It's definitely encouraged to do so. And you can also see every single transaction that's ever happened on the network. So again, going back to the transparency of it all, you can see what money has gone from one place to another ever since the start of Bitcoin. It's an incredible sort of change from the banking systems, for example, that we have now, or the closed off networks that we have now. And it's a vast change. It's quite a difference in mentality that you have when applying sort of research, when applying these technologies in applications. Being transparent, being accountable, open source, it's got an incredible development community as well. So everybody is involved because they love these aspects of it. They love the fact that everybody is in it for the technology, for driving change, for changing systems which may be either rigged against us or maybe rigged against some other people, or generally not fair. So this just means that everyone is in it together. It's a brilliant place to be for development and for a community where people are driving towards the same sort of goals. And to help all of this, it's a very low barrier of entry. So as I've just mentioned, the software is free to download. You're definitely encouraged to do so. And you can run it on practically anything. I hope that everyone recognizes this. If you don't, it's called a Raspberry Pi. This is the Model 4. It's the latest version. It's an incredible little device. You can pick them up for about £35, and you can run the Bitcoin software. You can be part of the network. You can start being part of this decentralized distributed system. If you have one of these little computers, if you have an old laptop lying around, and if you have an internet connection, that's all you need. There's guides online. Everybody online is around to help everyone else. So yes, it's a very easy thing to get into, but as I said, the rabbit hole is very, very deep. So there's a lot to learn and a lot to understand at the same time. So Bitcoin is trustless as well. So this is a quote by Lord Acton. He's a 19th century philosopher and politician. You may have come across it. So power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. If you have the power in the hands of the few, then they tend to use it for things which aren't beneficial to the masses. And this is a quote that is bandied about in the community. So don't trust, verify. And what that basically means, and I apply it to what I'm telling you here today, is you shouldn't trust what you're told. You should go and research it yourself. You should verify it yourself. And Bitcoin and similar cryptocurrencies, they provide all of the tools for you to do that at the leisure of your own time in your own home. Bitcoin it's immutable. So immutability means it's got some sort of embedded security. If you use it, you don't need an antivirus. There's no sort of password applied to the network. It's all open source. There's no firewall stopping it. The traffic is encouraged to flow. and valid data exists forever. As soon as data has been accepted by the nodes on the Bitcoin blockchain, then it cannot be removed. Yeah, it's one of these systems where if you wanted to undo a transaction, it would take you the resources of a large country like China, and even then you wouldn't be able to do it for more than 10 minutes, and all of your illegal transactions would get overwritten after that 10 minutes by the whole network, and you would be kicked off the network because they'd notice you'd be doing something which isn't abiding by the mathematical rules that everybody else has agreed to participate. So Bitcoin is most definitely a positively disruptive technology. This photo is from a conference in Birmingham I attended. I've been there a couple of years in a row, called BitBrum. A friend of mine, Joe Rotherham, he organises and runs it, and incredible place for people to go from all walks of life. You get bankers, you get students, you get pilots, you get proper geeks and nerds, and you get people who have just heard of this weird internet money who just want to get involved. And there are these meetups all over the place, and especially now with the world being as it is, the internet is so much more important, and these meetups are still going on. Everyone's using Zoom chats, they are still meeting up and talking online, and they are all trying to do the same thing. They're trying to provide the best use case and the best experience to everybody involved without fail. This is kind of the most important thing about it. It is to make it reliable, robust. I understand it's not the easiest technology to get involved in and to use at the moment, but it's still in its infancy and it's making leaps and bounds. Every week there is a new piece of software that makes it easier, makes it harder to lose your funds, makes it easier to teach your friends and to transfer money. I'll go through some of those topics later on. And a couple of quotes that you, well, I guess they're the terms which are bandied about quite a lot. One of them is be your own bank. So Bitcoin allows you to be your own bank. As soon as you have one of these nodes set up, either on a Raspberry Pi or a laptop, then it means that you can start accepting money, you can start sending money. There is no limits, there is no time frame. You can transact 24/7, 365 days a year, as long as you have an internet connection. And even if you don't have a broadband internet connection, there is now a company that has satellites, that if you have a satellite dish, then you can transmit Bitcoin transactions via satellite. Another one, bank the unbankable. So this is about giving everybody who is not in a position to go to a bank with their passport, their driving license, their statements from where they live. There are 7 odd billion people in the world, and about 5 billion of them are unbanked at the moment. And why shouldn't they be banked? Everybody has a mobile phone. Well, not everybody, but most countries in the world have mobile phones, and that's all you need in order to send a transaction. You can send it via text. You can, you don't need one of those Raspberry Pis to be part of sending and receiving money. It's a much lower band of entry if you just want to send and receive money. So if you have a text phone, then that's all you need in order to participate in this network. So it's much easier for people to start to receive money from anybody all over the world at any time of day, with the minimum of transaction fees, and there is no delay. There is no, oh, we cannot do it because it's Friday afternoon and we're going home for the weekend. It doesn't matter. The internet doesn't stop. These computers do not stop running. So I've been talking a lot about Bitcoin. How does that relate to the blockchain? So there's a lot of information around online about what is a blockchain. Is Bitcoin the blockchain? How do they relate? Do they relate? Do they depend on each other? So very briefly, there are many, many different types of blockchains. It's within your power to download that source code from GitHub and modify something, anything, and release your own coin. You can change any parameter about it and start your own blockchain. You would be the only one running it unless you got some friends to join in. However, it just means that the more people that join in, the stronger your network is. Bitcoin happens to have been the first blockchain of its kind. It's not perfect. It was not perfect when it first started. It's not perfect now. There are patches being released. There have been patches released continuously. It's around 12 years old now, and in 12 years, the Bitcoin network has been down for about 6 hours. And that was within the first few years. There was a bug that was found, so not many people using it at all. The bug was found, the bug was patched, and the release of the patch was sent out to everybody involved, and the network carried on going, and it's still going today. So the blockchain is an integral part of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is an integral part of the blockchain. If you separate them apart, then they can operate. You can have a different type of coin, you can have a different type of blockchain, but they will not have the strengths as they do when it's particularly Bitcoin, with the amount of people running it, with the amount of energy that's being used for the strengths, for the securities behind it. If you take that away, then it really is nothing so remarkable. It's just a standard ledger that you might have in a company that somebody could come and alter a record of. So yes, Bitcoin and the blockchain, they are integrally linked. And yeah. So some popular questions that I've been asked about Bitcoin and the blockchain that I thought I'd go through. So first off, what is a blockchain? What is mining? What gives Bitcoin value? And who controls Bitcoin? So first off, what is a blockchain? This is about as technical as this talk's going to get. I will try and keep it quite high level, and I will try and be general in my explanation, so I hope that it makes sense to everyone listening. Before I talk about the blockchain specifically, I need to briefly say what a hash is. A hash is a cryptographic function that generates a digital signature from input data. So, for example, you may have 4 zeros, just 4 zeros like this. You then have a hashing function. You pass those 4 zeros into the function, and it outputs this string, which bears no resemblance at all to the input data. If you change the input data at all, then the output string is completely different. The idea behind this is that the hash is non-reversible. You cannot generate the input data from the output string. And this is an integral part of the blockchain that I'll describe in a second. So now we can start our blockchain. We obviously, on the x-axis, we have time. So we start with our first block. This is referred as the Genesis block. There's not really much information in there, just some configuration about the blockchain and the subsequent processes that are going to carry on. You then have the next block. So the next block will start to contain some interesting data. This data in relation to Bitcoin is transactions. It's where Bitcoin exists, who has access to it, where has it been, what transactions have been made. Now the chain in the blockchain is signaled by the lovely picture of a chain there, and they are chained together because block 1 has the hash of everything in block 0. So if you change anything in block 0, then the hash will change, and so block 1 will have to change as well. This isn't so difficult to change when you only have 2 blocks. However, after time, you have another block. This has some new transactions, some new data. This has the hash of the previous block in it, which has the hash of the first block in it, block 0. So over time, you have another block. And again, this has the previous block's hash in it, and so on and so on. So the longer the blockchain, the harder it is to change the data in these blocks, in these transactions. It becomes much harder to reverse transactions, to modify data. So what is mining? Mining is used to generate those blocks that we've just seen being created. It is done using things called application-specific integrated circuits, or ASICs. They are they used to be laptops. You used to be able to mine Bitcoin on laptops. Then you used to be able to use graphics cards, and then now, well, most people use these very specific pieces of hardware. You may have seen photos of warehouses with shelves of tens of thousands of these, all lined up, all whirring away, all trying to solve a problem. And that's what mining is. Mining is a global race every approximately 10 minutes for Bitcoin, and it is to solve a problem. And this is a pre-agreed problem, and the first person who wins, the first person who is able to solve that problem, they win some Bitcoin. So this block, recent block, so there are just over 630,000 blocks now in the Bitcoin blockchain. The 631,031st block, the person who solved that race, who solved that problem, using their hardware, using quite a lot of energy, which I will come back to it in a moment, they earned 8.36 Bitcoin, which is about $80,000. So approximately every 10 minutes, someone somewhere in the world will earn about approximately $80,000. This value goes up and down from various factors, but you can think of it, every 10 minutes, somebody is earning this amount of money. So that's what pays for all of these pieces of hardware. That's what pays for the energy. That's what provides the Bitcoin blockchain with its strength. So if you wanted to undo all of those blocks, those over 500,000 blocks, you would need to reverse all of that energy, or you would need to overpower it using something called a 51% attack. You would need to have over half of the energy of the network, and you would need to maintain that. And then you would need to win this race every 10 minutes. It's the odds are astronomically impossible now. I wish I had some numbers up here, because the number of stars in the universe doesn't come close to the amount of energy that's required for trying to beat this problem. So what gives Bitcoin its value? All of these people using energy. Why is it valuable? So first off, it's a store of value. Bitcoin is worth something. At the moment, it's worth about £8,000. This can fluctuate. I'm sure everyone remembers a few years ago it went up to sort of $20,000, and everyone got very excited by it, and then it crashed back down again, and now it's come back up again. But it is a store of value. It's also a good transfer of value. So I can transfer some Bitcoin to my dad or to some friends. They can transfer some to me. So it's a useful way to transfer funds, transfer money across the internet. You can do things with Bitcoin, so it's got some utility. It's got a lot of utility, and that's being built on all of the time. One thing is micropayments. Now, if you were thinking of doing a small transaction on a credit card, you may not pay anything, but the person who you are paying will have to pay a fee. If you wanted to do a micropayment, say you wanted to pay a couple of pennies or a couple of cents every 5 seconds, is it going to be worthwhile doing that, or is the fee going to outweigh the amount that you're actually paying? With Bitcoin and with technologies that are built on top of it, this is possible. It allows you to transfer minuscule amounts of money every few seconds or every few minutes, or however you define it, using some software. And it enables things like streaming video, and then you're streaming funds back at the same time. So real-time payment for real-time data. Interoperability. So being open source software. It's designed for people to pick it up and run with it. It's designed for people to develop it in their own time at home or as a career or however they like. And because of this, it is able to be connected with a lot of different systems very easily. So JavaScript is my language of choice for interacting with the Bitcoin blockchain. But you can use C, you can use C#. Basically, you can use Go. This is quite a popular one now. Basically, any modern popular language, popular programming language that you can think of, you can use with Bitcoin and the network. And the things that you can plug into the network as well. It's, as I said, it's designed to be adapted and it's designed to be used. So it can be plugged into things such as data streaming centers, if you are, or energy streaming centers, and these things can be plumbed into it very easily. And some of the value, of course, comes from speculation. People think it's worth something, and so that gives it value. Yeah, it's an unavoidable fact. This is the same for a lot of other things, such as diamonds or gold or anything, or seashells, when seashells were used as currency, or stones before that, or feathers before that. If people believe that something has value, collectible stamps, for example, then that gives them value. And there's going to be more reasons why it has value that are to be seen. So each day there are more people using it, developing on it, and thinking of new applications for it, and all of these give it value. Who controls Bitcoin? In short, nobody. It is an open system, an open network. The long answer is the community. So everybody involved, the people who hold Bitcoin, the miners who actually do the mining of the blocks. They can control who. Well, they don't control it; it's part of the software. Sorry, but they can decide to take part or not. The software developers. So there is it's a very everybody who is involved in developing the Bitcoin software. It's peer reviewed, the code is analyzed, it's all open source, so any bugs can be found by anybody. And the development of it is done in a way that if everybody in the ecosystem believes it's a good idea, and if it benefits everybody, then a change is made. But it's very rare that a large change is made to the Bitcoin core software. Merchants who use Bitcoin, they also have some control of it. If they want to use it, they're going to increase the transactions, they are going to increase the price of it. If nobody uses it, then it's going to be without value. So embedded system designers, if they want to incorporate it into their systems, they will have some say on how it is used, on how it's viewed, and so on. So who knows who may be involved in the future with it. So some common topics that you may see in the press are things like power consumption, the speed and cost of transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain, Bitcoin volatility and losing Bitcoin. And people say, oh, I thought Bitcoin was dead. So first off, power consumption. Bitcoin uses a lot of energy. The network uses around 4.97 gigawatts. This is fairly well known because of the system. The energy use is transparent. Everybody can see what's going on in the network. So this is one reason why this number is bandied about quite a lot and why people talk about it, because it's an easy to find out piece of information. If you wanted to find out what the energy usage is of another industry, it's a much harder topic. That information is not readily available. For example, this is a graph of the energy use of the Bitcoin blockchain since its inception. This is by Cambridge. The link's down there. You're welcome to have a look at it and see what the estimated energy consumption is. So there are people who are part of the network who may be off-grid, so solar arrays, or if they have a waterfall in their garden that they are connecting a generator to, and they want to do some mining that way, then it's a bit harder to track. However, the actual mining that's going onto the network, that is known. The number of guesses on the network and the difficulty of the network, that's a known quantity. So Bitcoin, it uses around about 0.25% of the energy worldwide. That's not an insignificant amount, and I don't pretend that that's a small amount. But you may compare it to other things which do a similar, if not slightly different thing. Say, for example, gold. Gold, it's a store of value. It has some other uses. You can use it in some electronics, maybe some medical uses. You can have it on your expensive food. But then how is gold mined? You have these big trucks driving around with lots of rocks on the back. You have chemicals being pumped into the ground. You have the earth being scarred in order to mine gold. So it's very hard to compare the energy and the damage done by something like Bitcoin to anything else. It is a completely different use case. And you've got to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is what Bitcoin and what the blockchain can provide, is it really worth the energy? Is it really worth expending that energy? Should it be done? I think yes, obviously. Hopefully I will describe some reasons why. Another topic is speed and cost of transaction. So Bitcoin at its core can do 7 transactions per second, which is not a huge amount. Maybe a small village could use it if they wanted to, and they could probably use it seamlessly. But worldwide, I don't think it's going to be very useful to wait for your transaction. Visa, on the other hand, 7,000 transactions per second. So you cannot compare. However, when you look at some other stats, the Bitcoin blockchain has around about 10,000 active nodes. So the people who are mining it, everyone with the Raspberry Pi, I currently have 2 of them running, just looking over to my right. So there's another 2 nodes onto the network. All of these people are part of this network. Visa has 119 data centers, so far few data centers. So referring back to the decentralization of the Bitcoin network. And I need to point out that because Bitcoin is a fundamental foundational layer, it is something like the HTTP to broadband. It's like the internet in the 1990s. It is the ground layer that technologies are built on, that they are developed on top of. The most important thing when building anything is that you have a strong foundation. And Bitcoin has proven over 12 years, it's never been hacked, that there is no stronger public ledger in the world that's ever been conceived. Maybe it was a good time for Bitcoin to be conceived when it was, but regardless of that fact, Bitcoin as a concept, it can do things which nothing else can. It is a system which can provide security and safety to data. Now the speed and cost of transactions, to go back to that, I'll try not to talk too much on the slide. Their second layer has been built on top of it. Something called the Lightning Network, which I'm heavily involved in now. It's like a peer-to-peer network built on top of Bitcoin. It allows you instantaneous transactions to your peers, and it costs really next to nothing. You can do these transactions hundreds or thousands of times, and you can have them between you and all of your friends. And if more people join in, then you can have more transactions. So there are layers being built on top of it. So yes, speed and cost of Bitcoin transactions on the core layer, they are, as I say, pretty low. But the things being developed on top of it are enabling much quicker, much cheaper, much easier transactions. So the volatility and losing coins. Yes, Bitcoin is volatile. It's flown up and down all over the place. Bear in mind, it started at a price of zero 12 years ago, and now it's at £8,000. Jumped up to maybe 15 or 16,000 pounds a few years ago. Yes, it's inevitable. There are going to be people that try and play the Bitcoin network. There are going to be people that try and benefit and earn money off of it, and they will transfer money in and out of it to try and manipulate the network. However, as more people use it, and as the use cases grow, it becomes more stable. Also, so for losing coins, as time goes on, more people get involved in developing it, more people have better use cases, better examples, better suggestions on how to prevent losing coins. There is now ways that you can back up your wallets. So a wallet is used to access your Bitcoin. You cannot go to a central server and click on a button that says, I've forgotten my password, please can I reset it? That does not exist. But there are ways, there are steps that are very easy to take. They are jotting down some words. Those words can then be entered into another piece of software, another wallet, and it allows you to retrieve those funds. This is one example of how development on the Bitcoin blockchain is allowing people to become more comfortable in having money invested in Bitcoin. It's a nice sort of transition onto so the first ever Bitcoin block, the Genesis block. Mine there, it says 9th of January 2009, 2:54 a.m. And there is a hidden message in that block, and it says, as does the newspaper, the Times, 3rd Jan 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout of banks. This was around when there was the massive global economic crisis. And this was the first ever Bitcoin block. So the data that was included in that block, in the Genesis block, included this. That says something about why it came about. And yeah, I thought Bitcoin was dead. I heard from a lot of people that it was dead. Apparently, it's died 380 times so far, according to various media outlets. There's a website dedicated to it, 99bitcoins.com/Bitcoin obituaries, and it lists every single one of them. So far, I've never seen Bitcoin truly die, and I don't expect it to anytime soon. Recently, the Bitcoin blockchain network, there's a transition every 4 years where the miners receive less reward for mining that block. It's called the halvening. It's kind of a side point, but quite a cool geeky thing that was in the last block was another message, and you can see this message here, which relates to the New York Times article, which is about the recent injection of the trillions of dollars that the Federal Reserve is inflating basically the US dollar. So again, just a side note, just something quite cool and geeky that was in one of the blocks that somebody noticed, which is a very nice hark back to the Genesis block. And yes, this was mined very recently. So a couple of weeks ago, a week or so ago, I was online with some other sort of Bitcoin aficionados, counting down to this event, and to block 630,000 where this event happened, the block before this message was in there. So on to a topic that some of you may be a bit more familiar about. So building services engineering, including HVAC and R and MEP. So did a bit of research. Construction accounts for about 7% of the working age population worldwide, which is pretty enormous. There's approximately $10 trillion spent on construction-related goods and services each year. However, the pre-tax margins for construction are down. So the average is about 1.5%, down 4.1%. That's $1.6 trillion wasted. That's 2% of the global economy wasted. And it's been found that around 20% of those cost overruns are caused by inefficient project governance. And in the UK, about 75% of the projects are over budget. So some use cases, some examples of how blockchain has been used in construction. This example is a space-based land analysis. So it's a company called Hypervine, and the project was co-funded by the European Space Agency. So that's their image there, it's of San Francisco Bay. And what this company, Hypervine, based in Glasgow, were doing were they're aiming to improve the efficiency for extractive industries using space-based data. Now, data from space is obviously quite expensive to send up a satellite and take photos, and there's quite a lot of demand for that sort of thing. So you don't want to lose that data. You want to be sure that that data is what it says on the tin. This company provides data for topography, so for liquid, mineral and density readings of the planet Earth for extractive industries. And about 500,000 global extraction sites have benefited from this improved transparency worldwide. Another benefit from this improved transparency is a carbon reduction with operational efficiencies that have been gained because you have a better oversight of what's going on, and also a safety improvement. There is no lost paperwork, no misrecorded data, so there's much fewer accidents that occur as a cause of someone leaving their private diary in their drawer over the weekend, or someone's on holiday when they needed to double check the maintenance of a machine. All of this data could be stored somewhere that is easily accessible by anybody. Another example I found is real-time energy monitoring. So it's company Acciona, I think it's pronounced. It's a Spanish company. Yeah, the construction company focusing in energy infrastructure and water. And what their system does is it validates that the energy that they are providing is from a renewable source. And these are for clients in Spain and Portugal. And they've developed, well, it's a scalable integration with data systems. So they're using Internet of Things devices, so IoTs, which can easily be integrated with very small, very low powered, very easy to package, very cheap as well, very easy to integrate with these global systems, and it allows great scalability. Another example I found for real estate. So company Skanska, based in Finland, and they now allow you to do a home sale in minutes. So I don't know if anyone listening or many people listening have purchased a home, but it definitely takes more than a few minutes. And this is a couple of photos from the first person who bought their home using this system. It took a few minutes, as I said, and you can see in the during and after photo, everyone is smiling, everyone is in a good mood, which again is quite different to a typical house buying situation. And finally, land registry. So this is a company in Finland called ChromaWay. They're Sweden, sorry, called ChromaWay, and they are working with the Swedish government for a national land registry. Now, a few resources if you did want to find out more, if you wanted to do some reading. I can highly recommend the source for Bitcoin information is bitcoin.org. This links you to many different areas. It will link you to the Bitcoin white paper if you wanted to read about how Bitcoin works. Another very cool website is mempool space/TV. This is a live illustration of the Bitcoin blockchain. It's showing, you can see there the blocks on the right hand side, so block 631,044. was mined, you can see how many transactions were in that block. You can click on that block. So if you jump on that website, you can click on those blocks and you can dive down into each transaction. You can see how much was transferred from what address to where. It's very, very cool. All open source, or you can see everything. There's another guy, Andreas Antonopoulos, on YouTube. YouTube is full of information about these topics, but this guy in particular, I can highly recommend. Very high quality talks. He discusses in much better clarity than I can about what I've spoken about today, and much, much more. He's been in the space for a decade or so. He's got a background in cybersecurity and networks. He knows his stuff, and he's a great talker. And another geeky cool website is blockchain.com/charts. You can jump on here and you can find out all of the technical information about what the blockchain network is doing right now, including energy use. You can find out how many hashes are being generated each second. It's in the trillions per second of that are being generated. Yeah, very cool website. And if you did have any questions that you haven't thought of now that you did want to ask me, then please do send me an email. My email address is tomdwyer.uk. My current employer for blockchain things is extrap.io. My friend Lawrence is he's the boss of that, and we're doing some very cool things at the moment with Bitcoin, blockchains, microtransactions, smart contracts, which I didn't have time to speak about today. Some great stuff going on there. And some final thoughts. So here's a quote: "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." It's from this guy, Albert Einstein. Great quote. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thanks, Tom. That was really good, and lots of undoubtedly opened as many questions as it answered. The question is, which crypto coin will be useful for the building industry? Using Bitcoin will be expensive.
That's a great question. So yes, using Bitcoin and pushing all of your data to Bitcoin network will be slow, it will be expensive. It's not the greatest thing to do. However, it is a great foundational layer to base other chains on. So you can do something called pegging, and you can peg another blockchain to the Bitcoin blockchain. What this means is you are using some information from the Bitcoin blockchain, which has all of those security benefits, and then you can build a private blockchain alongside it. It's going to be easier to manipulate the private blockchain, but if you are, well, it's more secure than having a private database for sure. There's also so Ethereum is another cryptocurrency. Ethereum is designed, it runs fantastically well in parallel to Bitcoin. Some work I'm doing at the moment is with both of these cryptocurrencies together, with a second layer solution on top of Bitcoin, allowing fast, cheap transactions. And Ethereum is it's a programmable money. What that means is that instead of just having finances being stored on a public ledger, you have software code being stored in a public ledger. And as long as people are running that code, then that can be stored on there indefinitely. There are systems being built on top of those as well. So there's something called IPFS. If you search those words, it stands for Interplanetary File System, IPFS. This is almost like a blockchain, but for data, and it allows you to share data peer-to-peer across the internet without using any servers. And each time you change data, then it has a different signature, has a different hash, which then you can use to peg against the Bitcoin blockchain for that increased security as well.
This question came early on, Tom. You said that the whole idea was solving a problem. What do you mean by solving a problem when you were talking about mining?
Okay, so for a mined block to be valid, it has to have the hash of the block fitting to a certain specification. So the illustration that I gave earlier, when you hash something, you get this number coming out of it. The hash that occurs in the Bitcoin blockchain is a little bit more, there's a few more steps involved. You have something called a nonce, which is a number that's used only once, and you use that, you iterate over millions and millions of these numbers along with the hash of the previous data in order for the output hash to have a certain number of zeros at the end of it, at the start of it. Greater the number of zeros at the start is harder to do. If you wanted to get a particular row of letters or a row of numbers in here, it's, as I said, you cannot reverse engineer it. So you just have to guess. You have to hit it with brute force, and you have to guess time and time and time again until you get something which conforms to the correct rule. So this mining, this guessing of a value is what takes up the time and energy. And you take in transactions, you take in data, you take in the hash of the previous block, which cannot be changed, and then you iterate over this nonce until you get an output hash which conforms to these set of guidelines. This output hash can change over time. The number of zeros at the start of it changes over time depending on how many people are involved in the network, and that changes the difficulty. And if you have a higher number of zeros, you need on average to guess more times before you get it.
Where does the real value come from in Bitcoin? So it's dollars or pounds. How do you get dollars or pounds from something that's created from energy?
So this is it's a very good question. I think that's what people say when they don't know the exact answer. It comes down to what do people find useful and what do people want to pay money for. If you can provide a service, if you can provide something to somebody that they value, then they will trade you for it. They will exchange something for it. Bitcoin has utility. Bitcoin has uses. And these uses are what people find valuable. So whether it is to hedge your bets, to prevent an investment fund which may turn to nothing by a bad investment, and then you still have your Bitcoin stored, that is some value to it. That has some value. Whether you need to transfer funds across the world to your friend without paying high exchange rates, that's another value to it. Some countries have hyperinflation, so there are places in the world where Bitcoin is not a choice, but it's the only thing that they can do in order to feed their families, because their local currency is turning to nothing basically. So it's a long answer, and yes, you can make Bitcoin with the sun, definitely. I don't know how much you'd get in terms of, you'd need a massive solar array, maybe this one that Trump is talking about in the States. That's some good news for me.
Okay. I think we've got a feel for it. We got a feel for that one. Sorry to rush you, Tom, but we've got so many questions. I'm just going to drop a couple more in because we're overrunning a little bit. It's due to my losing my connection. I do apologise. Okay, let's just pick up another one here for someone. A very practical question, Tom. Is it possible to track bitcoins if they're actually stolen and sent somewhere that you don't want them to be sent, or are they so secure that that's impossible?
So every Bitcoin transaction can be tracked. This is something which is very different to the typical sort of finance system, in that every single Bitcoin you can view when it came into existence. You can see when it's been transferred from one address to another, and yes, you can track it. Definitely, you can track it. There are systems that people are developing to improve the anonymity of Bitcoin. So some people think that Bitcoin is anonymous, that it's great for criminals. It's terrible for criminals, because if you are not very savvy with your VPN, and if you're sending a Bitcoin transaction from your laptop at home, someone can see where that transaction has come from. Not only can they see where it's come from, They can see where it's been, and they can see how much, and they can see where it's gone. So you can track the IP address of it, and this is what's happened on a number of occasions actually by the law forces in several countries. I think America are pretty good at it, in the UK as well. And yes, you can track Bitcoin.
Okay, thank you. Just answering a question of several people asked. Yes, this presentation will be available as a PDF file on the CIBSE ASHRAE website later, and hopefully on your screen now you can see how to get yourself a CPD certificate if you so desire one. There's one that'll be, you can use that address there. We've got time just for one more question. I had a question earlier on, Tom, and I think it's quite a useful question to ask you. As the hash process is such an important part of the blockchain, who writes that? Where does that come from, these hash functions? Do you have to write these individually, or are these a system that's written elsewhere?
So Bitcoin uses a couple of different hashes. There are a lot of different styles of hash functions available online. You can write your own one. It will be invalid with the Bitcoin blockchain, unfortunately. Bitcoin uses two. One of them that I think was developed by the CIA, and the other one is, I think it's an open source hash. So there is some speculation whether the CIA have some secret special key to undo these hash functions, but the amount of people that are analyzing the software code, because as I said, it's all open source, you can see where the ones and zeros are going. It's very hard to hide. It's not a black box, as you might say in some fields, modeling fields or something. You can see exactly what is happening to the data. So you don't generate your own hash function. You have to use a predetermined set of hash functions, and you can hash a hash. So the output string that I think you may be able to see on screen, I'm not sure.
No,
for the output string,
I've got mine up at the moment.
That's okay. That's okay. But the output string from a hash, you can hash it again with another hash, and that then doubles up on your hashing. It massively increases your security. And this is what's done in the Bitcoin blockchain. It's a double hashing that goes on.
Well, Tom, thank you. I think there's opportunity for us to look around and find some more application webinars to build on this one. I've had a few questions about how it can be applied to specific areas of building service engineering, yes. But we haven't got time to look at those today. So I would just like to thank Tom for coming online today and presenting this to us.